Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Universal Church of Truth. It is 1 o'clock in the morning for me. It is earlier than that for Mary. We are on opposite coasts, but we have both just seen Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. I am one half of your host, Hunter, from a variant Earth where I am exactly the same, except I wear these ill-fitting glasses all the time. And this is
This is Mary, a variant that looks nice and classy. So, yeah.
Mary looks
Not,
nice all the
it's
time, right, everybody?
not a Moon Knight sweatshirt, although I love that sweatshirt. How about putting it on? But we can do that, like, what, in 2 days? Moon Knight finale. Yeah, it's big time.
There, the glasses go here now. Okay, Mary, this movie was awesome.
I fucking loved it. It really did. I was sitting there just like, smiling at it the whole time. And we were in like the big Dolby Theater in LA, and it was a lot of people. All those cosplayers you see like on the side of the red carpet, like they all go to the premiere. I didn't know this. Anyway, so they were all in there. So everyone was screaming and like clapping the whole time. So I had that energy with it, but I was just having a ball.
Pillars? Is that what that is?
The what?
Are they
There was a lot of them, so I doubt it. Like I think I don't know if there's anyone who's listening, is there a program to go into cosplay for LA events that gets you anything? I don't know.
I would love to get that gig.
Yeah, I mean, they had it. They had that gig. But no, I loved it. I knew a lot of the leaks and a lot of the plot things. Like so I realized I didn't know the ending. Like I mean there's always a sense of
I realized that too.
How it's gonna end in a reasonable way, but like I realized I did not understand or know beforehand how it was going to end, so that's kind of fun. It was so Sam Raimi. I think everyone said that. You said that. I saw your quote. And the horror aspect was so fun. Like I didn't know. I'm not always the biggest horror person. I'm not against it, but it's not always something I'm like cheering for. But I loved it. It was so, and at times it was a little corny, and that was like the best. Like when they would hit people's faces, and it was like someone's like shadow face was here, and then like this weird music. I loved it.
This movie was so cheesy. Like it's such a cheeseball movie, and I think that like that might be the thing that I love the most about it is I love a comic book movie that knows how to be serious when it needs to be, but also like doesn't really take itself that seriously because at the end of the day it is a comic book movie, and I think that's something that Raimi does really well. I mean, I think you see that in the Spider-Man movies, but even if you go back and watch like Darkman, I think is such a good example from Raimi of doing this like comic book type movie, but being unabashedly goofy the whole time and just embracing it, and it makes it so fun. And there's so much in this movie that's just like kind of stupid, but in the best way possible, like in the best way, and it made me so happy.
No, and it's crazy. I was thinking like, who is going into this movie not having watched WandaVision, and all they know is whatever she did in Endgame, which was "You will know who I am," right? That was like her last thing she did. And if they never watched WandaVision, they just roll up into this Wanda, and that's wild. I will say WandaVision was required reading if you wanted to like really get it. And she was fucking great. Like honestly, in my mind, like that's the best villain we've had in the MCU. I mean, like great and everything, but she like had it all. Like she destroyed everything. She just wanted to be with her kids. Like it was all over the place. I loved it.
For me, Wanda in this seems a lot like what the Fox movies were really hoping Jean Grey, like becoming the villain, would be. The difference being that, especially in like the movie Dark Phoenix, Jean Grey, we had seen her as like a side character once or twice, and then suddenly she was just the main bad guy. Whereas with Wanda, we've had like so much time with this character, and we've seen the reasons before this movie even started why she would go down this path. And so when we do meet her and she's just sort of like immediately the bad guy of the movie, like we already get it. Like it's already been sold to us, and we already have an appreciation and respect for this character. So it works. It works in a way that, you know, it's that whole like MCU thing. This is what they want to be able to do, is
Yeah.
paying off of story arcs from other movies and whatnot. But
And
yeah,
it,
she was great.
yeah, it's the first time I think it's not like they've had a lot of chances for some of their series to like actually matter into the movies, you
Mm-hmm.
know. And because What If too, obviously with Captain Carter,
Yeah.
like that was a direct thing from that. And there are a lot of weird What If like parallels, like just tiny little moments, and I'm like that happened in What If. But so that's kind of cool. It's the first time, but it does raise a question of how accessible is the MCU to the general audience if they
Mm-hmm.
think they have to watch like all these TV shows. But yeah, I loved Wanda. I knew I was going to because I like the character, and like I don't know what this makes me sound like, but I love a really strong female character who goes nuts. Like I really do, and I'm
You're a
really
big fan of the final season of Game of Thrones.
yeah. And so I'm really excited for like Cersei from Eternals because in the comics she does the same thing, not the exact same thing, but goes nuts for lack of a better term. And so I was really excited for this, and I like it because they are hinting at a lot of Wanda's comics history without being able. I guess they can now technically, but for a long time they couldn't touch a lot of her stories because
Mm-hmm.
she's very much an X-Men, and now they've kind of retconned that she's not a mutant. But they're going through a lot of. I think people want like House of M, and in my mind, like WandaVision was House of M. Like,
Yeah.
yeah,
No, I fully agree.
yeah, okay. And so I think even now they are still going through big moments in that character's history just differently, but the same vibe and the same. She's struggling with her power. She's struggling with these kids. She didn't forget him like she did in the comics, but similar kind of thing. She kind of had to force herself to destroy them. It's worse, but yeah. So I loved her. I did. She was.
Yeah. I'm a big Scarlet Witch fan. I'm just a big fan of like the way she wipes the floor with people. Like every time someone came up to her, they're like, "Oh, we're gonna like shoot an arrow at her, and I'm sure this will work." And like every time that happened, I was like, "Yo, you're about to get deaded. Like you're about to be killed so hard, and you have no idea."
I think the one thing it could have done better, even with WandaVision, is highlighting what the Scarlet Witch is or what that means.
Hmm.
Because even they obviously did it at the very end of WandaVision, and it's like a very powerful person, you know. But I think going into this one, it was like, boom, she's a Scarlet
Yeah.
Witch. She's
Well, and you have Wong give that like one line where he's like, "Ah, the Scarlet Witch is this like she's prophesized to either rule the multiverse or just annihilate it or something." And then when they get to Mount Wundagore, which also super cool that that's
yeah,
like in this movie. When they get to Mount Wundagore and they're like, "Oh, this is actually like a shrine. Like this is a throne to the Scarlet Witch, and it's just been here waiting for her for like eternity." I do agree. That did feel like I got it as someone who has read comics and watches all the shows and everything, but I could imagine a casual viewer being like, "Where is all of this coming from?"
I thought the exact same thing. I remember like when she got in there, I was like, I understand the reference, and I'm not like an expert at these references, but like I get it. And but I'm like, yeah, the average person's just like, this just showed up. Like this is just random. So I will say that maybe is my one little criticism, at least so far. Like I felt like they could have built up like her significance as in terms of her powers and her, witchcraft and whatnot more within the movie. Because she kind of was just like, fuck yeah, I'm gonna kill all of you. Great.
Right.
And she did it well. And that's, I don't know where we want to start, but I know people probably want to talk about the Illuminati. Uh,
Right. We should probably just get that out of the way, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
But
So we have the Illuminati, and the Illuminati is really cool for like a couple minutes. and then they all, again, like I said earlier, they all die really hard. Like they die in just brutal,
Yeah.
brutal ways.
Oh, it's great.
Like
Yeah.
this movie, I think one of the things that surprised me most about this movie was, they had said, like you said, the horror elements I was kind of expecting, and I really liked those. I thought it was really well done. Like everything with Wanda being this like creepy, like monstrous specter
Like, what is
was really cool.
the ring? It's like almost like that at the end.
When she comes out of that like gong or whatever, and she's like contort. Yeah, that was a lot. Yeah.
And she's so different than WandaVision Wanda, like in terms of physically like doing shit like
Yeah. Well,
it's wild.
There was an interview with Elizabeth Olsen like semi recently where she was talking about how what she liked about playing Wanda in this project specifically was that in like every other time she's played Wanda, Wanda has been this character who's really confused about what she's capable of doing and really confused about what's happening to her and what she is doing and all this stuff. Whereas in this movie, this is like maybe the first time since she's debuted in the MCU that we've seen this character like she knows what she's capable of, she knows what she wants, and she is purposefully like going to get it. And of course, she's like somewhat um affected by the Darkhold, and they make that clear to give that leeway of like, well, she's not entirely bad, it's just the bad magic and like all that sort of stuff. But it was weird to see that, but it was also like kind of exciting. Like every time she just looked at someone and had that spark in her eye of like, I'm gonna kill you, I was like, oh, you're gonna die, you're gonna die.
Like Elizabeth Olsen was like good in it. Like that first sort of when she came to Camertage, and she was like, I've been reasonable.
Yeah.
And like, what are you done? You like summon demons across the multiverse. Like you are not reasonable. She is, and she just lost death and like, I've been reasonable.
As soon as she was like, oh, I've been reasonable, as soon as she said that line, I was like, oh, they're in for it. I was like, everyone's in for it for the rest of the movie. Like nobody is safe.
That's what I'm saying. I love it because she's affected by the Darkhold. She's very still grieving. She's very emotional, but she's very powerful and like is still logical in her own way. So like her version of like crazy woman, it's like phenomenal. I love it. Yeah, okay, so the Illuminati kills them all.
I'm sorry. I know people pay for this. People pay to watch this, and then we're like, it's 1 a.m. here. I'm like, yeah, but yes, the Illuminati. I mean, everything that happens to them aside, for those couple minutes when they're first introduced, it's undeniably cool. I mean, there was like the eruption of cheers and applause in my theater, which I expected, but is always fun to hear. I think that a lot of us heard the leaks about. I mean, they straight up put like a lot of hints about Xavier in the trailers, and everyone heard the Krasinski leaks.
The only ones they didn't put in the trailers ever were Krasinski's Reed and Anson Mount as Black Bolt, right?
Yeah, because Anson Mount as Black Bolt was the big ticket item.
Yeah.
They really had to
couldn't bring anybody.
Everyone was really clamoring about Anson Mount's Black Bolt. Yeah.
I was surprised. So like obviously we kind of had an idea of who was in it beforehand, like most people who are just on the internet, really. But it was still cool to see. Yeah, when John Krasinski.
Yeah, because they gave him like the build up, and I think that like I guess I have seen so many fan-made edits of that man in a Fantastic Four suit that it was really nice to just like see a final product on the big screen and sort of get it over with. Like, if that makes sense. Yeah. And he was good. Like, he was good for the small role that he played.
Like, I think he was good,
I think he was good. He did some talking, and then he got thrown through a cheese grater, and that was fine.
Yeah, his talking was pretty good. Like, I was, I struggle sometimes with actors like that because it's like it's not always a problem, but I think with him in that role, I would really have a hard time not seeing John Krasinski. But I felt like from what I saw, like it probably would have been fine.
I didn't even see Jim. I saw like the dad from A Quiet Place. That's what I saw.
It's just him, really.
It's just him. But we just to attempt to keep things on track, we know Captain Carter. I think something that we could like talk about and maybe try to break down is so Strange gets, for context, Strange gets thrown into this alternate universe with America, and they go to the Sanctum Sanctorum to find out in this universe, Strange is the one who killed Thanos, and he seems to be essentially like what Tony Stark is in the mainstream universe to the people of this place. And Carl Mordo, now long hair edition, he plays nice at first, but then he kidnaps them, he drugs them, kidnaps them, sends them to the Illuminati and redheaded Christine Palmer, and now they're in front of the Illuminati. But I think the question that raises for me is there are bits of dialogue in the movie that make it sound like these members of the Illuminati are, I guess I thought the Illuminati was going to be like a bunch of people from separate universes.
No, I know what you mean. Yeah, but
the movie makes it feel like they're all from this universe.
Yeah, it's kind of almost like they were the Avengers, but they were just called the Illuminati.
Yeah, that's what it felt like.
Some cooler people.
Yeah, like a cooler, but that confuses me because
Fox universe.
Right. So my next question is like, is this the same universe that Captain Carter's What If episodes take place in, or is there just a few different universes where Peggy becomes Captain Carter, which is totally possible with like infinite realities and everything.
Yeah.
But just like each member of this Illuminati, they had like little hints of things. Like I think this was the first time we heard the word Inhuman in like a mainstream MCU movie, when they reference Black Bolt being an Inhuman. Which I mean, listen, whatever you think about Anson Mount, he did look pretty good in that like comic accurate Black Bolt suit.
Yeah, I didn't have a problem with it in this movie. I really didn't.
Yeah, he was great. I mean,
I think the Illuminati got more time than I thought they would. And I really thought they would kind of stand up there, like we saw in the trailer, and say a few things, and then Wanda would come in and just like.
I was glad we at least saw. I think the movie knew we wanted to see them do some cool actiony stuff, and it gave us that before they killed them. And like, I'm glad they gave us that little flashback of Black Bolt disintegrating Doctor Strange, because I really needed to see Black Bolt do a voice thing at least once. I truly did.
Yeah, because there's people who don't know who he is still, and they're like,
right,
what?
Yeah, I thought that was funny. I think it's great that they like went to the lengths to get the actor from the really terrible ABC TV show, and then also like not explain it at all, and just like there's like this random character, but I think that might, and again I don't know, I would love to hear the opinion of someone who like doesn't know who Black Bolt is and watches the movie, and because it could just work as them being like, yeah, this is the multiverse and like there are just crazy alternate heroes out there, so it is what it is. But something I wanted to bring up in terms of like, because this movie is chock full of really cool comic book references and details and stuff. And like, we see Patrick Stewart comes back as Charles Xavier, and that's really great. And he's like super old now, but he's still doing his thing. And it's cool because like this variant is clearly not the Professor X he played in the Fox movies. We already saw that guy die and everything, but he has like the comic accurate yellow floaty chair, which is wonderful. And when he first comes in, they play that like 90s X-Men theme song a little bit. There's like a hint of it, and I wasn't expecting them to just outright play that. Which really pumped me up, and also makes me think about X-Men 97 coming out, and like maybe that is just part of the MCU multiverse now or something.
Wasn't there?
I don't know.
He had an article out today. I don't know who wrote it, but there was an interview. They asked the creator of X-Men 97 if it was canon. Like, we're not going to tell you because part of the surprise is finding out, which means maybe.
Feels like a yes, right? Like, like,
And
I don't know
so,
what else it
especially
is.
if the look is that similar, that I would assume that that's on purpose if they do go that route.
Right.
But oh, super cool scene though was when he like entered Wanda's mind and he was trying to pull out like the regular Wanda from who also had her powers but like wasn't, falls to the wall Scarlet Witch. And then the like red sort of smoke comes in.
You know what that reminded me of?
Yeah.
That reminded me of, I'm blanking on the artist's name right now, and I feel really bad, but I think people are gonna know. Do you remember there was that like limited Scarlet Witch series that all of the covers were like red, like they were like had that solid red.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah. There's like this 2016-ish ones.
Yeah. I forget the artist's name, and I wish that I could give them credit right now. But
Library.
yeah, like we have phones. Technology exists. This is great. Um, yeah, but it reminded me of that, and part of me deep down was really hoping that was like a purposeful reference to those covers because I really do love that artwork.
Because it was white, yeah. And I
Yeah.
think Patrick Stewart, who's walking in that, but he had a black shirt.
Yeah.
But okay, what we need to do is we need to go through each member and how they died.
Yeah, we do. Let's just start with Xavier because we're already talking about him. Let's talk about the fact that Xavier actually, when he was doing his mind thing, it actually had the like comic booky like waves coming out of his head, which I thought was great. That made me so happy. And he does in fact get his neck snapped, which
Yes.
Yeah, he does. And it's creepy. And this is also, I think, the third time we've seen Patrick Stewart's Professor X die in a movie.
He's ready. He's like, I'll come back for all this, guys.
It doesn't matter.
And it was creepy the way. So, ironically, especially for the MCU, his death was one of the least violent. But yet, neck snapping's never really pleasant. And it was creepy. It was like a jump scare type neck snap, and you saw it in kind of real life too. Fun times. Yeah. So I think he was like the final guy. I don't think Mordo never died because he got like he and Dr. Strange kind of
Mordo survives.
He got stuck.
Variant Mordo's out there. Mainstream Mordo doesn't even play a role in this movie. But yeah, he survives the longest, but he only survives the longest because when everything starts going down, he just sort of like dips for a second and then he comes back when he's needed.
Yeah.
The first person to go is our friend Anson Mount's Black Bolt. And it's also my favorite death of all of them because it's wildly creative. Having her, the fact that she's like, oh, his thing is that he talks and then everyone disintegrates and buildings collapse. Cool. Just no mouth. And then his mouth is gone. And then his instinct is to freak out because his mouth is gone. And then when he makes noise because it can't come out, his brain just explodes. And then his head turns to jelly and he collapses and they show the whole thing.
I know, and I get it's not rated R. R-rated stuff really just comes down to a lot of blood half the time. I know there's more, but like obviously there wasn't a shit ton of blood, and they did the like Ultron Sentry kind of grease on Wanda that made it look like blood. That's how they got away with that part. But yeah, that was still brutal. Watching not something you normally see.
Yeah,
the whole theater's
because his eyes like blew like. Yeah, it was nasty. And then his body just collapses with no score in the background. They just let the body hit the floor.
I will say the Illuminati did not seem fazed by their fall.
No, they didn't. That was going to be the next comment I just made, was they were just like, oh, Anson Mount. All right, well, we didn't like him anyway. Like, that was the vibe. They were like, we got to go. We were like, oh, we didn't care about him. It's fine. He was a terrible conversationalist. He was not fun at parties.
Was Reed next? I think he was next because he was like,
Yeah.
wait, hold up. We shouldn't start killing people watching.
Because Reed watched her make a man's mouth disappear and was like, I got this.
Like, listen.
He's like, you haven't seen my arms stretch. So, like, I think we're going to get this.
He was like, do your children have a mother?
Oh, by the way, Speaking of Reed, this is like the third time I've tried to bring this up, and then before I got distracted, this time I'm gonna actually say it. This movie, and I wasn't expecting this, is I think the first ever in a movie like reference of like a Franklin Richards or
Yeah.
like
Valeria.
yeah, like the fact that they have kids, like
Yeah.
I thought that was crazy.
Yeah.
Because I was sort of expecting him to maybe make a reference to like Sue or Johnny or even Ben, or like that would have made sense because he is wearing the Fantastic Four uniform, so clearly that team is currently active. But I really like it really caught me off guard that he name dropped Franklin. And well didn't name drop Franklin specifically, but Franklin and Valeria just like existing. And I thought it was especially interesting that coming up in a movie about the multiverse when Franklin's whole thing is like creating pocket realities and whatnot.
And Valeria has her whole very convoluted
Yeah.
story also involving that. Yeah, no, I did notice that too, and that's one of those kind of if you don't. That's in all MCU movies. There, if you don't read certain comics or every comic ever, there are certain little references you're not going to get. But I feel like, and Charles said this about that kind of span of time where the Illuminati were on screen, kind of thing. There was a lot of stuff for comic creators, and I think we still have not gotten through all the deaths. Okay,
No, he got cheese grated.
Reed put through a cheese grater, but like worse, and then just kind of like popped at the end.
Yeah, his head popped. His head popped at the end, like a little firework. It was like when you took those things and you like pull the bottom out and the top goes boom. That's what it was like.
Pretty chill. He was fun. Captain Carter.
That one was brutal.
That was brutal, and that's how Zombie Cap died in the Zombie What If episode.
Oh, that's a good catch.
Particularly related, but like I thought that was interesting, so I rewatched it.
That's a really good catch. I was sort of surprised that it. I do find amusement in the idea that in a fight against the Scarlet Witch, Captain Carter lasted significantly longer than both Black Bolt and Reed Richards. And I thought that was great.
Yeah.
And then she got cut in half by her own shield. She did have a jetpack, though, and that was pretty neat.
She did have the jetpack. I think, honestly, it was because of the scene where they all, like, came down at once. They needed her to be able to do that.
They really wanted Captain Carter in this, even though, like, power set-wise, she just wasn't at the same level as the other.
Doesn't really make a ton of sense. And to your point of, was her What If universe the same as the one she's in now? I mean, we just watched her die.
Right, and they keep saying that she might come back in season 2 of What If. I'm like, it's gonna be kind of sad.
I think, yeah, probably not. But I think Captain Marvel, she just kind of got crushed.
Yeah, that was the one death that kind of disappointed me.
Like, yeah, that one was pretty good.
It makes sense that
that's kind of how Wanda dies at the end. Like, she also.
Yeah, but I don't think Wanda's dead.
Yeah. I'm saying, whenever people get crushed in movies, it's like they're not.
They're not dead. It didn't work on Brock Rumlow. It's not going to work here. But apparently,
I saw Frank Grillo tonight.
You saw Frank Grillo today?
Yes.
That's so exciting.
Mm-hmm.
That's got to be the number one. I'm sure there was not a more famous person you saw all day.
Honestly, I mean, to be fair, the whole cast like came out.
Yeah.
No, but all the famous people was like once you had to have your phone like locked in these weird little. Did you get those? Like they were real fancy, like phone pouches. I don't know. So I didn't get to take pictures of anyone cool, but he was there. Patton Oswalt was there. This is unrelated. I'm sorry.
That's okay. No, that's okay. The people want to hear you talk about your really cool like elbow brushing with the rich and famous.
It was cool. I saw some TikTokers. Did
they put Patton Oswalt through a cheese grater, or did he make it?
He just went in like everybody else. I saw Tiffany Haddish. She just I door. So I don't know.
She just went in like everyone else. They didn't murder the guests.
Yeah. Saw Danny Elfman.
Right. Oh, that's sick.
Oh, okay. So I think we talked about how they all died. The Illuminati died. Spoilers. I don't know how you're watching this. You don't want them. But that scene between our Doctor Strange and then the, I guess, sinister Doctor Strange with the music.
That was so good. I loved it. It was so good. Yes. I was talking about this You see how excited I just got? That's so good. I watched that scene, and my first thought was like, people are going to be mad about this. Like, I'm waiting because like you have Doctor Strange versus Sinister Strange, and you know people are expecting some like big crazy what if level, like the craziest magic fight to ever have magic in the history of magic movies, putting Harry and Baldy to shame. Like that's like what people are expecting, and no, it's just two Stevens with like different tastes in music going at it. And, and it's the best. But that's what I mean when I say like this,
That was
like
fucking
this.
great. I love. At first, I was like, "This is weirdly like a lot of it's cheeseball." I like your term, but
Yeah,
I'm like, first, I'm like, "This is really cheeseball," and then I'm like, "This is great." Like this
it's
is
so good
cheeseball.
because like this is at the end of the day, this is a movie. This is a movie where right after this, Doctor Strange dreamwalks into his own corpse and then fights the Scarlet Witch on top of Mount Wundagore while this teenager who can punch portals through space and time is like, this is a comic book movie, right? Like crazy things are going on. Entertain me.
Yeah. And it's weird, like it promised to be. And I think people went and go, "Okay, how many weird cameos are we gonna get?" And you got plenty, and you probably knew what they were before you go in. If you're like one of those people who like scours the internet. But honestly, that's like, I thought the Illuminati is cool. I love that Wanda just like wrecked him, honestly. But all the other just Doctor Strangey, weird, kind of corny, but just like weird stuff, like the music fight. That was my favorite. I loved all of it. I loved
It's
the
just
horror elements. I loved when Wanda finally took over that housewife Wanda. I don't know her, and then like stares at the camera. And it's just like shit like that. Like, why is Wanda all of a sudden just scary? Love it.
there was also that scene. You might remember again. I only got the one watch in me, but like there was a lot in that movie. But there's like a weird It's not a montage, but it's like they're like showing something happening, and then like Wanda or like Doctor Strange is sort of like superimposed over what's going on,
What I tried
and
to
it,
describe earlier when they were just all edited on top of each other,
yeah,
like
and it lasted for like
music.
3 minutes longer than it should have. It
I
was
just
good. It was great.
really like it. I think if you're going to be very picky with it, people do, I'm not writing the review. I'm very pleased about that. I just get to have thoughts. But at the end of the day, I love that part of it because it just does. It's just this weird full circle of like weird, but there's some very serious stuff and there's some scary stuff in there. There's quips, there's MCU quips, but it's not as much as I would think usual. But I'm not.
I mean, it's funny, but I feel like it was funnier. It was funny in a different way than I mean, there are quips, but most of the comedy for me just came from like things being weird and people just accepting it. Like, and that was really great.
Yeah,
Um, yeah. So we covered the music fight. I feel like
that's cool.
I I feel like we're like 30-ish, 35 minutes into this. We should probably start covering some like comic book references and things that got
I'm ready. I'm ready with one.
heck yeah. Everyone, Mary just stopped me to let me know that she's ready. And
I asked
that
earlier and I knew I was going to forget, so I'm now.
Mary stopped me to let me know that she's been reasonable.
It's a big
And
God damn. And like, okay, we'll come back to this again. But like, so Juan is probably not dead. Shocking.
Oh no,
But I
absolutely
mean,
not.
there were some very heavily rumored, not confirmed, but probably gonna happen, solo Scarlet Witch projects. So do with that what you will. But what was my point? Oh, back to the other point. Don't know why I said that. So the comic book reference I was thinking of. So when John Krasinski as Reed Richards before he is noodled, he gets his big moment. Like one of the first things he starts talking about, and they talk about it throughout it after that, just kind of every once in a while, were incursions where yes, they would, realities would get destroyed. And that's like Secret Wars. Like that's just like that's like
Of course.
the most. I think everybody knows like with the multiverse and things like that seems like a very obvious place that the MCU is going and to be like the big event, the end game sort of whatever phase that we're at that point. But that was very much they laid the ground for that several different times in that movie, and I don't think I was next to Charles and he went, "Oh,
Yeah.
oh." Like I don't think too many people were
Like,
expecting that to like really be as obvious in that movie as it was.
yeah, I mean, yeah. So, folks at home, you probably should have watched the movie before you watched this. But if you didn't, incursions are when essentially two universes like collide and collapse in on each other and cease to exist ultimately. Ha! But because that's what happened to the Ultimate Universe. Um, but yeah, that was really big. And you know what's funny is maybe it's just because I was so swept away, but it took him saying incursions like 3 times for me to like hit in my head, and I was like, oh, oh. Like,
I read Secret Wars like last week, so I was like, "What?"
yeah.
And like, where is it happening? Where do I need to go? Like, where's Doctor Doom? Like, but yeah, no Doctor Doom in this movie. Whoever thought those cameos would happen?
Although
Was
there was a statue in Mount Wundagore that clearly was not Doctor Doom, but his like he had like this like arm position was looking down, and it kind of reminded me of Doctor Doom, but with like a demon face.
was that the? Oh, it could have been yeah, because that mountain is also where the High Evolutionary did
Mhm.
it. Obviously, and that's all. I mean, that's the biggest part of Wanda's like connection to it, but obviously the Darkhold connection is where they went with it here. So it's interesting because what is that actor's name they cast as, or do we know who's cast as the High Evolutionary if we know at
Oh,
all?
we don't. They have not officially revealed anything. There are theories that that's who the guy from Peacemaker, uh,
Yeah,
Chuck
that's who it was. Okay,
something. Yeah,
Guardians 3, right? Like that's
yeah.
what.
There are rumors. It's not confirmed. It hasn't even been leaked. It's literally just people like trying to piece things together. But
But,
yeah,
but that's what I was thinking. It was just I was trying to picture like if that rumor came true. I have no idea. I don't know shit about
yeah,
Volume 3, but how it's interesting to see how those would relate because obviously Guardians are usually kind of up in their own little
yeah.
space.
And also worth mentioning is that Mount Wundagore also is the original comic book birthplace of Jessica Drew's Spider-Woman, and that is a movie that Sony is supposedly developing. And depending on how connecty these universes get, you could be seeing Mount Wundagore more, even though it sort of collapsed and whatnot. But
Yeah.
who
Could
knows?
could have been a different universes.
The multiverse thing is a really good like get out of jail free card in like a lot of ways.
I think that could make it get old eventually. But see,
Yeah.
incursions.
Incursions.
Richard sold us and father,
Incursions.
his fatherless children going forward. They're gonna be. That's the Fantastic Four movie. He's just not in it because he's
He's
dead.
just not in it. They're like Reed died. They're like he said he had to go to like a town board meeting and he never came back. I don't really know what's going on.
Really, they just never had a rematch. Be bold.
um
That's funny.
More comic book stuff. The movie starts off, beginning of the movie, with a variant of Doctor Strange who ends up being a zombie later on, that marketing has referred to as Defender Strange. Um, he has a ponytail, which doesn't matter. I just like to say it. And yeah, the name, I think a lot of people had presumed that he was going to be a variant from like a universe with like because in the comics, the Defenders before Netflix did the Defenders were a comic book team that was like Doctor Strange, the Hulk, Silver Surfer, Namor, I think.
Very different than Netflix.
Very different group of individuals. Very much not street level. And I think with marketing having called him Defender Strange, people thought that might be a thing.
Yeah.
That's not in the movie. I almost think they call him Defender Strange just because the only time we see him alive, he's attempting to defend America Chavez. Chavez, sorry.
Very quickly not doing that.
Yeah, he's very quickly not doing that. Like, he is immediately, and then he is immediately like, actually, I'm going to have to kill you.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, he's called Defender Strange, which may or may not be a reference to that. And the outfit that he is wearing is very reminiscent of another semi-famous Doctor Strange comic book design that we hadn't seen in the movies yet, which isn't really from his time with the Defenders. It's just, at least not the original run. It is just another suit he's worn.
Mm. He didn't get a lot of time. He was the opening, fast-paced opening, and then but that was the thing though. He did set up the theme that I think they held really well, even because I think Wanda naturally stole a lot of the drama, emotional resonance of the film. But I think they did a good job keeping Stevens up there with Christine. They kept Christine as a very unattainable, we love each other, but it's never going to work out. What If episode 4, beautiful, beautiful TV. But they did set that up early on with him, with Defender Strange, of this concept of Steven might just always do the bad fucking shit. Like, several times as he got closer to things, he's like, oh, I'd never fuck with the Darkhold. And then he's like, well, I'm using the Darkhold. And he's like, well, I might have to take your powers.
Yeah.
And yeah. I think so. I think it did a good job of keeping him, like, not this pristine, easy character.
No, I mean, the big theme of the movie is his hubris and, like, his arrogance and the fact that he thinks every decision he makes is the right decision, and sometimes he's just being kind of a tool. But speaking of, I was going to do a different comic book reference, but I also think this movie gives us our first confirmation that MCU Doctor Strange had a younger sister who died, Donna Strange, who is a thing in the comics, and that is why he becomes a doctor and has such, like, every decision I make has to be the right decision. That's like the origin of that in the comics, is because he feels guilty that he couldn't save his sister. So he's like, that will never happen again. I will never be in a situation where there's someone that I can't save. And that's like a really big part of why his personality is the way that it is. And I always thought it was interesting that they didn't bring that up in the first movie. And I was really excited that he talked about it in this one.
Yeah. I have a question.
Okay.
And it's kind of about the ending. So, I mean, after he possesses his dead body, Strange, and he eventually gets back or whatever, but then he has I'm not gonna move my pants, like the evil eye from that like Sinister Strange has. Like, what? And then obviously post mid-credit scene, Clea comes and said, hey, you fucked up again, let's go to the dark dimension and have a good time. And he has that. Is there like an obvious significance to that I just don't have a full familiarity with? Okay. Because
at the very least, nothing that I know of.
Okay. Because I didn't know if they were like setting up a really obvious arc that I just apparently didn't know. Because otherwise I'm like, I mean, I know he's maybe going to hang out in the dark dimension more, but he seems like he's going away from everybody else that we
could both be wrong, and Charles could fire us immediately after this comes out. But as far as I know, I don't think there's any like super well-known Doctor Strange arc where he has a third eye and then goes to the dark dimension. I mean, if we're talking about that post-credit scene, they never say her name or like what her whole deal is. But once again, folks at home, that is Clea, played, surprise, by Charlize Theron. And Clea's whole thing is, in the comics, she is sort of the most enduring, like, recurring love interest for Steven. and she is from the dark dimension, and she is like the niece of Dormammu, and who you might remember from the first movie. And yeah, she kind of like partners with Steven and was, you mean back when she was introduced, I think the intent was for her to be like Lady Doctor Strange, back when that was like the thing that comics did. And has since, she's very much not that. Like, she's very much her own character, and I'm excited for people to see her. But they really went all out with her design with like big poofy shoulder pads and everything too, which was great.
She was
But
very, straight out.
that,
She did.
I think regardless, it seems like this movie did a really good job of like wrapping up the Christine Palmer relationship and romance, and then giving us Clea in the after credit scene to kind of hint like Doctor Strange 3 or wherever we see next is going to be them together doing something.
Yeah. Well, he and Clea, though, it's the same kind of thing. And that's what always reminded me of Christine a little bit in the movies versus comics was Clea was, I mean, they got married at one point and everything, but they just could never, like, make it work because she was ruling the dark dimension. And
yeah, because she was the ruler of the dark dimension, and he was sworn to, not enjoy the dark dimension. So it was like a whole Romeo and Juliet forbidden love situation.
We've never really seen much of like Playboy Stephen Strange in the MCU. Like he kind of was extra flirty with Christine, like at the beginning of the first movie, but like
yeah.
But he goes through that most of those times. But yeah, that'll be interesting. It does make me wonder where he is going because is he just going down his own rabbit hole into
right. Well, you have to think if they're gonna. The end of this movie didn't like solve. I think a lot of people thought what this movie was going to be was like the multiverse breaks open and then Steven has to stop it. But it's not that. It's that there's a conflict with Scarlet Witch and the Darkhold, and then Steven just happens to get thrown into the multiverse while he's trying to solve it. This multiverse thing's not over, and we were talking about incursions earlier. So like clearly they're building towards like an even bigger, like we still have Loki season 2 and another season of What If and yada yada. So whatever they're doing, you have to think Steven's going to get pulled back into it. But it is interesting because it sets up him still having like his own Doctor Strange story. Like he's also still not the Sorcerer Supreme, which part of me thought he might become by the end of this movie. But it's still Wong. So I don't know.
I think if he's gonna go have his adventure in the dark dimension or something similar, like he's kind of just doing his own thing at a certain point. And that's what's interesting to me. Is like I just can't tell what his next arc in the MCU will be.
There's a lot of doors.
What?
There's a lot of doors that have been left open that you could potentially go into.
Yeah. I agree wholeheartedly with the fact that the multiverse was just kind of there. Like it wasn't like like they never addressed. Everyone can say you should have watched Spider-Man No Way Home before seeing this. You didn't need to fucking watch that. Like there's no way. Like
no, I saw someone on Twitter be like, you should watch like all of Loki, all of What If, all of WandaVision. You need to have seen like the final season of like X-Men the animated series, and like it was like a bunch of stuff, and I was like, you don't need to have seen any of that to like fully appreciate. Like you can still, maybe WandaVision being the only one to like avoid some confusion, but other than that you can pretty much just roll with it.
Actually, yeah. Because even Loki broke open the multiverse. That doesn't matter. Like that doesn't actually. Yeah. There was no. Everyone
doesn't play into this at all.
Yeah, what that threshold moment was. There just wasn't one. Like I don't think there really was because it wasn't one at the end. It wasn't Doctor Strange in this. Like.
And I think that would have been my main complaint had I not enjoyed the actual plot so much, was that the title does make it seem like it's going to be like the whole movie is going to take place in like a dozen different dimensions, but really it's just sort of like 2 or 3 main dimensions, and then they flash through a bunch of other ones really quick, which one of those flashed ones had the Living Tribunal in it, which I thought was a really cool little quick thing, which I also think is interesting. That implies that every universe has its own living tribunal as well, because at least one of the living tribunals' head is in the void in Loki. So, Yeah, and he was supposed to be in Infinity War at some point, and whatever. Another thing I kind of want to talk about was everyone thinking that I'm affectionately calling him Shuma Gargantos, but the Shuma Gorath looking monster named Gargantos, whatever. Um, a lot of people thought he was like the actual main villain or like secretly going to be like a bigger role in this movie than he had, and it turns out he's just like an interdimensional Goonie for Wanda.
Yeah, I really, and I know we kind of sometimes get a different vantage point than like people who like just see like trailers or whatever on TV or whatever. But like, it was hard to imagine that like very googly-eyed, silent, just kind of mangly guy was gonna fuck up the multiverse. Like, maybe
Yeah, well, I mean,
in
so
he's in every trailer, but he's not doing anything. He has no motive.
right,
But he,
and
yeah, no, he's just a guy.
it made sense when people thought because Shuma Gorath has like reality altering abilities in the comics, and he wants to like consume like people and like living energy and like
Yeah, so if Doctor Strange was saving it from.
yeah, so I can understand like the theory of like, oh, Shuma Gorath is like trying to eat his way through the multiverse and like Doctor Strange has to stop it. That would have made sense. But that's ultimately I feel like it's a slightly less interesting plot than as cool as he looks. But I do feel like they made him look like Shuma Gorath on purpose, if not as like a marketing misdirect, just as like a fun nod to like get the character in live action. They couldn't use the name, I think, for
Like some weird, very, very.
weird licensing purposes. But he also does get a top 10 anime death, his eye being pulled from his face and thrown to the ground.
It was a
Um,
relatively violent movie for like a PG
It
13.
was a really violent movie. I mean, you have Sinister Strange being impaled by his own fence too, so that was like a whole other thing.
That was a good one.
Yeah.
I had a great time.
I had a great time.
You just don't see
Um,
it. You got all these strong ass, superpowered people all the time, and you just punch them, and they're down,
of
unconscious,
course.
all the time. So
Um,
you impale people. You know,
my question for you, I'm sending a question back at you. When they get to Mount Wundagore,
Mhm.
well, first of all, there's I never pronounced this name correctly, a Sidan
Yeah,
name drop.
Chichan. They said it different than I say it in my head, so I'm not.
Yeah, it's spelled Chthon. You
Is it
everyone
CATH or is it like CTHON?
according to the Blade TV show, it's Chthon.
Well, that's
Blade
official.
House of Sasan.
I mean, it makes more sense than not, but I'm pretty, yeah. Chichan. Yes, they do. So that was his. I don't know. What did they say it was? Because that's where the Darkhold itself was
Yeah,
written, like on
and
physical walls of it, and whoever made the book was a copy.
right,
Um, so
and
I
they
guess it's where it's not obviously where he lived, but in the comics he has come through the Darkhold to possess Wanda.
right, but
Because
it was cool for them to name drop that he's the one who wrote the Darkhold. Um, and the my question to you is when they show up and there's a really great jump scare moment with one of those brutes just like appearing out of nowhere, those like big brute monster things. They kind of have a face that looks like him.
Mhm.
But my question is, are those like original creations for this movie that were designed to look like Seth or or
You know,
were they like Doctor Strange Beast things in the comics that I just didn't remember?
I had the same question while watching it, but and actually on the way home, thinking about it, I think I could be fired very quickly. I think they were relatively original for the movies. They probably do look like certain things that Doctor Strange has seen in his time, right? Because they're not. I mean, they're demon monsters.
Yeah, they
I don't think they were anything. overly specific, especially in that situation with the Darkhold. I don't know if they were. And what were the? That's another question. When Doctor Strange possessed the dead body, and it was all the spirits of or the souls of the damned, or the spirits of the damned. Is that? I haven't seen that before in the comics, but it seemed like something that would have come from the comics. I don't know if you've seen it.
I haven't seen it either.
It was
That's the thing is, like, I've read quite a few of these comics, but watching this movie, there's a lot of things that felt like this really feels like a Doctor Strange comic book thing, and then I couldn't quite put a name to it.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a lot of comics, and there's a lot of weird stuff. Yeah, especially.
I would love anyone who knows these references a little bit better than we do, or anyone who can put a name or theory to these things. Please let us know. It would be fantastic. I did think those little demon things were amazing, though, and the way they were like taunting and goofing with people was great.
Yeah.
And yeah, the monstrous things though, they almost reminded me of like if Seth if like he had his own like mindless ones. Like they reminded me of the mindless ones.
Yeah.
That was my first thought when I saw them, was they were some like mindless one ripoff, but their faces, they had the like face tentacle of Seth. So
yeah, that's what. Yeah, I just don't know if they had any specific like title or designation beyond goons of yeah. Ooh, does make me think. Maybe last criticism. I felt like the finale, the like conclusion was a little. I liked it. Like I liked the reasoning. So it was Wanda essentially having to watch herself hurt with a kid she's trying to like.
Oh yeah, because Wanda was so powerful they literally couldn't beat her, so they had to like trick her into.
Yeah. And so like that's fine. I felt like that was maybe a little quick, and it was a little bit like she was kind of already doing the same thing anyway. Like she had been fucking up that other version of herself a bit, and so then
Yeah.
I guess it was the kids like seeing her and calling her like a monster and like please don't hurt us. But felt a little quick to me. But honestly, really fucking love the movie. I think the quote I gave the site officially with our cool little images was that's probably my new favorite MCU movie. So
Yeah, I mean I really liked it.
yeah.
I feel like I'm going to see it again soon, and I'm hoping I can place it in my rankings a little bit better. I think in terms of talking about comic book references and breakdowns and whatnot, one of the last things we should talk about is probably America.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I was just thinking, so for those at home who don't know her whole thing in the comics, she is from this she's from this like dimension called what the utopian parallel, right? And it's like this universe that exists outside of like the multiverse, like it exists kind of on its own, which is sort of referenced in the fact that America says in the movie there's no other me in like the rest of the multiverse.
That was very interesting too. Yeah.
Yeah. And I attribute that to the whole comic book thing of like her universe existing sort of outside of the same space and time that like the rest of the multiverse functions in, and that's what I thought of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. What were your thoughts on America and any like comic book connections and whatnot?
So she didn't obviously name where she was from, but she just have a memory, and she's like, "That's where I'm from." And it looked very utopian, grass.
Yeah.
If it's utopia, it's grass. But and she had her two moms, and that was the big controversial thing for the countries that decided to ban the movie was because she had two moms. Like that was literally it. Not that I think it should be banned if it was more, obviously. But I don't know. So it's like representation. Like, yeah, I think.
Well, yeah.
Like not because the character, she's gay. But
yes.
and she has, I think, like a pride flag.
She does. She does have a little like pin on her jacket.
And so, like, I'm happy. I don't think every time a character who's, in this instance, LGBTQ plus needs to be, like, has to like have like a full exposition about it by any means. Like, it's representation for me, and so like I get the fact that I just want to see him on screen and be normal fucking people, and so she did that. So I like that, but I do wonder if the MCU like knows how to like ever have like two people kiss or like something. I don't know. I'm never convinced.
No, they don't have people kiss. They have them have a kid who gets stung by a bee and then throws them into the never-ending multiverse.
Yeah. Okay. And that's where I was thinking. So in the comics,
Mm-hmm.
there's a weird like retcon of her background. More weird.
At one point, it was that her moms like sacrificed themselves to
Yeah, so
save like.
that is the traditional, yeah, the mom sacrifice. For whatever reason, I forget why the utopian parallel was like in danger, but they sacrificed themselves and America like left kind of at the same time. But they just kind of presumably went to a different universe. So they're still out there in the MCU, in theory. I mean, they could have died, but like would have just told us if they did. But what's interesting, I just think it's interesting. There's this newer-ish retcon of her background of it wasn't really a different dimension. It was like this weird, like high-tech science experiment for like young kids like her, and I think maybe her sister. Never mind. Some sort of disease, and like this crazy doctor was like helping him. The moms were part of the experiment, and then something went wrong, and they died getting the kids out, kind of thing. So I assume they're going with the more classic.
I think the classic one fits with their with the story they needed a little bit better.
But they didn't really do her story per se, so I wonder in the future.
Because did they even really say how America ends up traversing across is it she's just looking for her moms?
They actually don't say that. I don't think they did.
Yeah. They never explain it. They we see that her moms get sucked in into a portal, and then we know that she's been to 73 multiverses universes, and we know that she doesn't think she can control her powers until the end, and they never say what she's doing. Like when we see her, she's just running from Wanda, but obviously she hasn't been running from Wanda this whole time.
And she when talking with Doctor Strange, she basically said she's not looking for her moms because she's just very pessimistically assuming that they're dead.
Yeah.
Like when he's like, they're still out there, she's like, no, not. And so, but I think at the end, because she's like trying to learn all the sorcery stuff too, which is very interesting because No Way Home and this movie were originally switched, and she was kind of supposed to be the Ned in No Way Home doing the portals. So I think No Way Home had to deal with that switch more than this movie.
I did enjoy the Spider-Man shout out at the beginning where they're like talking about his webs. I like that there's a Spider-Man movie directed by Sam Raimi with a Doctor Strange reference and a Doctor Strange movie directed by Sam Raimi with a Spider-Man reference. I like that that's a thing that exists.
I will say I was surprised that the events, what Doctor Strange did in No Way Home, had no bearing. Like, I thought it was like...
I thought they were going to be way more connected than they were.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be like, okay, he opened something and now he has to deal with what he...
Well, especially with like the after credit scenes in the recent Sony movies have all just been like made it seem like the events of No Way Home were like the multiverse thing that's just like throwing people around now.
But not in this movie. I really do think now I'm just feel like Doctor Strange was just there to be there. Like, I don't know.
It's curious to me that like in No Way Home and Loki, it's two separate events that like break open the multiverse, and neither of them have really been like resolved, which is fine.
Yeah.
Like Loki can tell its own story, Doctor Strange can tell its own story, and have them be like tangentially connected. But like, yeah, I don't know. I guess I just thought it was all gonna like come together more in Multiverse of Madness, and then Multiverse of Madness was very much like its own singular story.
Yes, which I loved actually at the end of the day. But the expectations were there for it to be like almost like Avengers level.
Yeah.
Care of a lot of things. But I will say something. The mechanics of how you can travel through the multiverse in the MCU are whack. Like, obviously, you have America, and she can do it, and that's like everyone's coolest thing. Like, she can just do it. Like, yay. But when in No Way Home, when he fucked it up, people just came in. Like, so it can't be that hard to like make it that hard for people to physically enter a new reality. But you know, in obviously in this movie, they had to do the dream walking through the dark hole.
Yeah.
And that's not even them going into it. So I don't know. I feel like No Way Home was weird in that regard because it kind of acted like.
Well, we will see how all of this ties together. Is there anything else from Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness that you feel like needs to be broken down? That you feel like any other comic book references, Easter eggs that you want to talk about?
Not that are on my mind currently. No. I loved the movie. I truly did. I liked it more than I thought I would. It wasn't like what I thought it was going to be like, even though
Yeah,
I knew the.
very different than I expected.
Yeah. So, big fan of Wanda. Even, I really
Big fan of Wanda.
she's like the best villain we've had. I'll put her up there with Thanos. I'll do it.
I'm glad. I'm glad to hear that you like, because that's going to be a controversial take on Twitter, and you're going to have to defend that a lot.
She's just the best one.
But you heard it here
Thanos
first.
was fun and like he is serious, but it's like I don't know. He was like,
The Scarlet Witch is the best villain, and with that, I think
yeah.
we're gonna start to wrap up this church this bonus, not bonus, church episode about Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. Everybody, thank you for listening. Thank you for listening to our thoughts and opinions and feelings on this movie. Thanks for listening to our comic book insight. I apologize for any delirium that comes from the fact that it is now 2:30 in the morning for me, and I am starting to lose it. So, any final thoughts, Mary?
You can't even say chitathon correctly, so you.
I can't even say fa-fa-fa-fa-fa. I can't even say fa-fa-fa-fa-fa.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, thank you for listening to the church episode about Doctor Strange in the House of Thethethon. Bye, everybody.